This is Bobby Cox from the Indiana High School Athletic Association. Remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today's guest has been in the business of educating students for nearly 50 years. Bob Gardner is the Executive Director of the National Federation of State High School Associations. Before taking over as only the fifth full-time Executive Director in the Federation's history in May of 2010, he had served in various roles including High School AD, Superintendent, and the Executive Director of the Indiana High School Athletic Association. Recently, Bob announced his retirement that will be effective in August of 2018. We're honored to have Bob Gardner on the show today. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jamie. I look forward to visiting with you today.
Yeah, it's great to catch up with you. Our podcast is entitled Success is a Choice, and you've done so much throughout your career. How would you define and measure success throughout your career?
Jamie, for me, I think success has been really something that I have tried to build relationships in all of the positions that I've had. Accomplishments are nice, and accomplishments, I think, come when you build strong relationships. And so whether that's in coaching with your players and fellow coaches and administrators and parents, or whether that's in administration, working with in a school setting with teachers and again, parents and students, or in a state association or national office, you work back through your staff and through your constituents. And when you build those strong relationships, and have mutual participation in goal setting, then I think accomplishments come from that.
Well, speaking of accomplishments, as you look back at your long and storied career, what are some of the accomplishments and the achievements that do stand out to you that you'll look back on kind of with a little bit of pride?
Well, I think that probably first and foremost here at the national office, promoting and fostering the atmosphere that we are family, that our state associations who are members of the national office are family, and that a family, can debate and discuss and then settle on a direction and then all pull together in that direction. And as I announced my retirement at our annual winter meeting just over the first part of this month, that was something that was related to me often by many of the executive directors across the country, that they feel valued and that they feel that they've been part of the Federation family, and that's been important to me. And so I look back at that with a great deal of pride. I think also at the national level, one of the things that we've done, that we're now in our fifth year, is we've started the NFHS Network. It's a web streaming network where we have engaged a number of state associations to share their content on their state championship events and the path to the state championship. And a number of schools have joined our school broadcast program. I'm a great example of the importance of that. I have grandchildren who live in Minnesota and who live in upstate New York. Very, very difficult with my schedule to get to their contests, and yet, I love to see them. So if their schools are a part of the school broadcast program, then I can tune in and see their events, and I think that's something that is growing, and so I'm very pleased with the growth of the network. I look forward to that continuing after I'm gone. So those are some of the key highlights. Obviously, that changes when you go to the state level and school level. And again, you look with pride and growth of your staffs and the young people that you work with, and I've been fortunate to see that at every stop that I've made in my career.
Well, and you've been at all the different levels, the local, the state, the national level, and you've dealt with some amazing coaches, I'm sure, along the way. Are there some common traits or qualities that you've seen in some of the best and most successful coaches?
I think there are. I think first it begins with the most successful coaches are able to demonstrate repeatedly that they care deeply about the young people that they're coaching. The old adage that they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care is certainly true with good coaches. That passion for the young people they're working with, that desire to lift them up, to instruct them to get the maximum out of themselves is a very common denominator among coaches. And that caring, manifests itself in some different ways with coaches according to their individual skills and abilities. But I think without a doubt, they put the young people first in their programs. Now, that's not to say that they're not demanding. Most of the really successful good coaches are demanding, and they demand effort. They demand a young person, be it a male or female in their programs, give their best effort all the time. And that's how growth occurs, and that's how young people get better and begin to build that self-confidence that I think all good coaches strive to build. You really look at the coaches that are successful at every level, and I think those are some of the key ingredients to their success. They're good teachers. They know how to teach what they want to achieve, and that passion for teaching is what sets them apart. And I've been fortunate to have played for some coaches like that, and then to have had some coaches in programs that I've been an administrator who demonstrated those abilities. And certainly as I've moved to the state and national level, you look at the people who are successful and you see those qualities often.
Because ultimately, coaches are educators still. That even if they're not in the classroom, their classroom is on the soccer pitch or the football field or the basketball floor, and so they're educating kids. And college sports. When you look at college sports, it's come under some scrutiny. It's come under some criticism through the years for being mainly a big business, for maybe losing touch with the mission of institutions. But how did your federation and the associations work to make sure that high school athletics still remain a healthy part of the educational process?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we strive to do almost every day. We remind people through the bully pulpits that we have and through the publications that sports are a part of education, an important part of education, albeit, but the classroom comes first. And I think when you look at that, there are certain essentials to successful participation for young people, and we have tried very hard to communicate those. When you look at successful programs, the educational piece fits so nicely with the sports part, and that's what's great about education-based athletics. Young people who participate in education-based athletics in our schools, by and large, they do better in school. And I think it's that coming together of both elements of education that is so critically important. And at the NFHS and in our member state associations, we trumpet that success. We continue to hammer away at that young people who participate in our programs, they do better in school, their attendance is better, they have fewer discipline referrals, because I think they get values from sports participation that carry over to education. And one of the things that we have really strived to hammer away is that, 98% of the young people in high school programs aren't going to go on and play at the next level or play professional sports. So they're learning values now in high school sports that will enable them to take those values into whatever they go pro in life. And that's extremely important. And I think that's a message that we just keep reiterating over and over to all of our publics.
Well, and we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast, that have sons or daughters that play sports. What advice would you have for them to help them through the process, not necessarily giving parent advice, on a day-to-day basis, but from an athletic standpoint, or how they can help develop the potential of their own son or daughter and their potential as a student athlete, what kind of advice or some tips would you give them?
Well, I think I would begin with reminding the parents who are listening, Jamie, that being a good role model. I think parents often forget that they are really the first role models that the young people look up to. And so demonstrating that work ethic. I was so fortunate that to have had good parents. My father was a coach first and then a school administrator throughout the remainder of his career. And I don't ever remember seeing him sit idle. He was always doing something, trying to learn something new, trying to get better. And that passion for learning is one of the things that I think enables a parent to really help their son or daughter grow. Not only for sport, but also for education, which we both know is critically important. And then beyond that, I think being a good supportive parent, attend your son or daughter's games if at all possible. Be supportive. Be there. Be the person who listens when they are struggling and frustrated, and be the person who is there to encourage them to keep working, to keep striving. Because most of us aren't just naturally gifted at everything we're going to try. And so the great thing about education-based sports is it's a laboratory that permits failure and learning from that failure in a safe environment. And I think that's what parents have to encourage. Keeping balance in the life of their student. Good athletes, need to learn that there's a rest period that's important. There's a recovery period that's important, as well as that great work ethic to work hard to learn and to improve. So just being a supportive parent. I was so fortunate that I experienced that and tried to pass that along to our own children as well.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges that face high school sports today, and also as we move forward in the future? What do you think will be some of the challenges that high school sports will face?
Well, I think first and foremost, funding, escalating costs, difficulty to maintain our programs in our schools when there's so much competition for the tax dollar and so much competition for support of our programs. And that's one of the things going forward that I think we have to be very cognizant of. One of the things that education-based sports have always provided in this country is an opportunity for the underprivileged, for kids from less fortunate circumstances to participate in our programs. And we have to really make sure that we're still providing that it's not just the wealthy, it's not just the privileged who come to education-based sports. That's not been the case, and I think that's a challenge we have to step up to meet in our programs going forward. And I think also education-based sports faces a little bit of a challenge from non-school programs that have tried to sometimes intrude on education-based sports. And we have to be vigilant that our programs have been able to teach pride in the school, pride in our communities, and that support is critically important going forward. Reinforcing those values of our communities are one of the goals of all education-based sport, and I think as we go forward, we have to continue to lift that up, to shine the light brightly on that, so that our young people get that opportunity to represent their school, to wear that uniform with the name of their school, the name of their community on it, and to model those values that we think are important in building the future leaders. That's our challenge. It's always been a challenge, but it's one I think that schools have met, and God willing, they'll continue to meet that going forward.
We'll return to the interview with Bob Gardner shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to mention something that goes hand in hand with what Bob has been passionate about his entire career, and that is of making a difference in the lives of young people. Frederick Douglass once said that it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Well, we've put together a book that helps student athletes learn how to be better leaders and positive teammates. It's called The Leadership Playbook. Become your team's most valuable leader. You see, when we help develop today's students, we can also help influence the future. So please visit theleadershipplaybook.com to learn more about this impactful book. And now back to more insights from Bob Gardner. Like most leaders, you've probably had to been a fireman at times, putting out some fires, and you've no doubt seen your fair share of controversies or challenges during your tenure as the National Federation of High Schools Executive Director. Have there been some rough patches when things ended up turning out for the best, when maybe you weren't sure that they would? Tell us about some of those times that you had to be a fireman.
Well, I think that's certainly the case. I guess by nature, I'm an optimist. I've always kind of looked on the bright side of things, and so I don't know that I ever expected failure, but you learn from the challenges and from some of the things that maybe don't initially go as well. And I think that a good administrator is not afraid to try things, not afraid to tweak things, to constantly be looking for ways to do things better. In my tenure, probably the most significant challenge came in the state of Indiana during the time that I was the leader of the Indiana High School Association, when our board made a change and moved our team sports from single class to multiple classes, and that met a lot of opposition. We really struggled with public support for that, and that was a difficult period. There were times when I wasn't sure that we were going to survive that, but we did, and that's going well in the state of Indiana. And the bottom line has been the young people who participate are getting wonderful opportunities and good learning experiences. And so I think you just learn how to adapt to the changing times and try to meet the needs of who it is that's important in your program. And that's first, foremost, and always the young people who participate in our programs.
Well, ironically, you were a part of when the IHSAA moved from single class to multi-class, and I say it was ironic because you were also an administrator at Milan High School, which is the school that Hoosiers is based on. And I imagine a lot of people were talking about, well, we'll never have another Hoosiers, if we go from single class to multi-class. And when you were at Milan High School, that was before the movie came out, but what was it like still being at a school with such a rich history and tradition as Milan High School?
Well, it was a wonderful experience. I did 2 different stints at Milan. I went there first as a coach. It was my first head coaching job, 1972. Left to go to a larger school and then came back as a principal and eventually was named the superintendent of schools during my tenure at Milan. A lot of wonderful people. Again, a school committed to opportunities for young people. And that was what was so terribly important. It was difficult at times for the current kids in school because the legacy of being the school, the small school that won the state championship, it was tough for kids to live up to that. And so we had to constantly work at reinforcing the values of effort and measuring our success not by the 1954 year, which was probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but measuring our success against what our potential was. And I think we were effective at doing that. The support for their programs remains strong. I've been back a few times in the later years and visited with former players and former staff members. The school is still going strong. The young people are still participating. They're having good success in a wide variety of programs. So that was a very enriching experience that gave me a different look at the opportunities for small schools and perhaps helped convince me that the changes made to multiple classes were indeed good changes.
Now, have you been to any of the Hoosier reunions for the movie, even though I know that you were at Milan before the movie came out? Have you taken part in any of those since?
I have not, but I know that a lot of those occur, and I think that's a wonderful thing. It's a great movie. It's one of my favorite sports movies, even though in reality, a lot of things in the movie do not actually match what happened in that storybook season. But I guess the most important thing in both is they made the last shot, so it worked out.
In the final shot, I understand, was pretty much exactly the way it happened. Is that correct?
That's pretty accurate. Yes, it is.
From what I read and what I understand, the coach was actually very young, right? And not like a Gene Hackman, not an older gentleman.
Right. Marvin Wood was the coach. He had coached for 2 years at French Lick, which you may recognize as the home of Larry Bird, long before Larry, of course, was around, but left French Lick to go to Milan and inherited a team that largely had played as sophomores for a coach who was let go because they weren't as successful as they hoped they'd be. And then the team kind of gelled under Marvin's leadership. What a lot of people don't realize is they went to the Final Four in 1953. So it was no surprise that they were back in 1954. They had a good group built on that. I've had the privilege of meeting almost all of them, and they're fine people who've all gone on and turned out well in life, which maybe is even more important. But yeah, Marvin was a young coach who was just did an excellent job. Went on and coached at other places successfully after Milan in his career.
Well, it doesn't make for as good of a movie if you say that Hoosiers, if they actually came up one game short the year before. It's better to say they just came out of nowhere like a David versus Goliath.
Well, and that's definitely true, and I think that's part of what makes the charm for the movie.
But yeah, you're right. It's still, regardless, it's still a great story because they're taking on people like Muncie Central and other schools that are just so much larger than they were. So that part of the movie was accurately portrayed, that they were the little guy taking on the big guy. And so, yeah, still the principles of that movie hold true.
Very true. And another important probably fact of that ride to the championship was the Milan team defeated Indianapolis Crispus Attucks in the semi-state competition, an Attucks team that had a young Oscar Robertson who was pretty good as a sophomore. They would come back and win the next two championships after Milan in 55 and 56. And I would have to say, still yet to this day, Oscar Robertson is the greatest player I've ever seen play in my career.
Yeah, he was a pretty good player. He turned out to be pretty successful.
He sure did.
Even though you're retiring here at the end of the summer, if you were, let's say you were staying on, hypothetically, you were staying on as executive director, maybe another 5 years, what would be something that you would love to see from the Federation or in high school sports if you were still to stay on?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mentioned earlier the NFHS Network. After 5 years, I want to see that continue to grow and be able to have our state associations and our schools reap the benefits of that. So that's certainly one of the challenges. We have moved from what I thought was a great model in my time as a high school athlete, and after that, where you participated in multiple sports, to so many more young people are specializing today. I would like to see the research continue, and we've begun that, and some of the early results indicate that specialization is not particularly good, that there are more injuries when you specialize and use the same muscles over and over. So I want to see that research carried out and go forward, and I know it will. And then communicating that to parents and to young people. When I talk to some of the top collegiate coaches across the country and they're recruiting, they really would prefer an athlete who is not specialized in their sport because they think there's more upside to that athlete. So communicating that message, again, looking for balance in the lives of young people. People often forget that the National Federation is more than just sport. We also have the performing arts side of speech, theater, debate, and music, and seeing those activities continue to grow and to flourish in our schools is also an important part of what I would like to see over the future. And then communicating again that it is participation in activities in sport that go to developing our future leaders. Leaders today in almost all of our Fortune 500 companies have participated in high school sports, and they talk about those values. And so continuing to carry that message forward and to build on those values that make this country what it's been and hopefully the best that it can be in the future. That's the things that I feel passionate about and would continue working on.
Now, for those people that don't know, the NFHS is actually located in Indianapolis. Has that been a positive thing for you guys? Have you been able to collaborate with the NCAA, who's also headquartered there?
Well, it really has, Jamie. Our offices for your listenership there are located right next door to the NCAA. In fact, our two buildings, we don't even have to go outside to go from one office to the other. We're connected by an upstairs walkway. That's permitted a lot of interaction between the two organizations. Many of our kids, obviously, are the ones who go on to participate at their level. And so a lot of interaction as we look at minimizing risk, dealing with issues that promote safer participation. We work together on values that I've talked about previously in our podcast here today are things that we also share and work together on. So that's been a wonderful experience. The two organizations moved at approximately the same time, not because each other was moving, but that has sure turned out, I believe, to be a benefit for both organizations.
Now, you served on the USA National Basketball Team Board of Directors. What was that experience like?
Well, that was a very rewarding experience to be involved at the international level, to help to promote the national teams at all different age groups, right on through our World Championship teams and Olympic teams. It's been very rewarding to get a chance to meet and get to know people like Mike Krzyzewski and Gio Ariyama, who've been directing our programs for the last few years. Again, very rewarding. We talked about great coaches. They embody those values of trying to be good teachers first, and that has been terrific. At the youth level, a guy by the name of Don Showalter, who was a high school coach in Iowa, has been very successful directing many of our age group national teams to great success, and again, embodying those values of participation in our young people. So I've enjoyed that, enjoyed the opportunity to interact with some of the leaders in both professional and collegiate sports, as well as leaders at the high school level through the USA Basketball. It's been very rewarding.
So what are your plans come August of 2018 when retirement, when that kicks in? What do you plan on doing?
Well, I think I'll continue to be an advocate for participation in high school sports and performing arts, no doubt. I'll probably still have some speaking opportunities, and I look forward to that. Beyond that, I want to be a good grandpa. Our oldest grandchild is a freshman in high school who is about 6'3.5" and 170 pounds and looks like going to be a pretty decent athlete. So I want to go see him and his sisters who are playing at 8th grade and 6th grade level in upstate New York. And in Minnesota, I've got a Nordic skier, cross-country runner grandson and an ice hockey grandson. So I want to get up there and see their events. So that'll occupy some time. Maybe being a little more devoted to my own fitness and in good weather, maybe getting out on the golf course with family and friends more often. So those are all things that are important. I look forward to having some time and spending more time with my wife, who has actually followed my career around. She was a teacher and a school counselor, and so when we moved, she moved as well, and kind of was in a secondary role, and now maybe some of the things that she wants to accomplish and do, we'll have a little more time for. So I look forward to all of that.
Well, Bob, where can people connect with you or learn more about the organization and what they're doing?
Well, I think probably the best place is through the website, NFHS.org. We have all of the various things that we're involved in, our educational programs, of which I'm very proud. When I came to the Federation, we started online education for coaches and parents. We had 2 courses, and today we're approaching 60 courses online. So the growth of that has been terrific, and I look forward to seeing that continue. But NFHS.org, and you can find how to get a hold of me and how to contact our organizations. We continue to try to build those positive values that enable our young people to thrive, to prosper, and be our leaders of tomorrow.
Well, Bob, we really appreciate your time today. I know you're busy helping guide and lead and direct all the many state associations of athletics, and it's a huge endeavor that you're involved in, and very very worthwhile, very valuable when you're adding value to student athletes. So we definitely appreciate your time and your insights today, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. It was a pleasure to be with you.
What a treat today it was to listen to Bob Gardner share some stories and some insights from his years devoted to helping grow and develop young people into future leaders. We hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. It was fun to talk to Bob. And please go ahead and share this. Share the podcast, share this episode with those people that you know that might be interested. And if you get a chance, go over to iTunes and leave us a quick little 5-star review. Reviews and ratings are the lifeblood of podcasts, and we would really appreciate you leaving us a kind little remark or comment, especially about Bob's episode. So thanks so much, and until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?